So today I'm going to do a video that is kind of a tradition that I do every single year whenever the schedule is released, and that of course is looking at the Quakes 2022 season. Now, this year, this video is a little bit delay, and I should have made this video a little bit earlier, but because I've been very busy these last couple of days, and especially this last week where I've been working a lot and I've been doing a lot of moving forward series episode, I haven't really got a chance until now to look at the Quakes season schedule for the 2022 season. But that being said, here we are taking a look at the schedule, and we start off with the opening day schedule where they're going to be playing against the New York Red Bulls on February 26th. I mean, we kind of knew that going all the way back to November when the league basically announced all the home opener for every single team, and that game is going to be at 3 o'clock. One thing that I also noticed, at least for the first couple of games, is that the Quakes are going to be playing a lot of day home games. Like, there's not a lot of night games until the summer month and into the fall months, and it's kind of interesting why that is the case. I mean, I guess maybe that is kind of the trend right now, where it seems like a lot of MLS games, especially the first couple of months, tends to be day games, and as we head into the summer month and into the fall month, then we have more night games. And I think a lot of that has to do with, now the season are starting very early. MLS teams don't want to play at night, especially those teams that play in a cold weather region. You do not want to play a game at nighttime when it's like 20 degrees or so. So that's why there's a lot of day games. Though for the Quakes, it's kind of interesting because they're not a team that plays in a cold weather region, and yet they still play during the daytime. But the very next game, they're going to be playing another Eastern Conference team, and I think I mentioned this before when I talked about the schedule release, where every single team is going to be playing 8 team that is in the Eastern Conference, and that's the same case for the Quakes. And what's also good about these 8 teams is that there are going to be, I think, a couple of teams in the East that the Quakes have not played a lot, and there's even one team that they have actually never faced that comes out in the Eastern Conference, and that's Inter Miami, that they'll face later this year. But yeah, it's been a while since the Quakes have played against the likes of Columbus and the Red Bulls, and as I mentioned, they play the Red Bulls at home their first game, and then they play against Columbus at home, and that game is going to be a 2:30 p.m. kickoff. The very next game, they will be going on the road to play against the Philadelphia Union. Again, it's been a while since the Quakes have actually went on an East Coast trip. I mean, I know they did go to Orlando last year for an East Coast trip, but that was it. I mean, that was the only time when they actually crossed east of the Mississippi, and they're going to do more this season, them going on the road against the Philadelphia Union, and that is a 7:30 p.m. start. And then the Blues Knot Derby, the first of 2 Blues Knot Derby, will happen in March, and it seems like the Blues Knot Derby this year is going to be either happening very early in the season, and then it's also going to happen very late in the season, because the other Blues Knot Derby that's going to be happening to October when the Quakes play against Minnesota is actually the last home game that the Quakes will be playing in that one. And I also know that there are some games that the Quakes have not actually announced the actual kickoff game, and I think all of them is actually home game, because I see here on May 7 when the Quakes play against Colorado, they still haven't mentioned when exactly the kickoff time is going to be for that game. But yeah, after that, the Quakes do return home from the international break, and they play against Austin FC, and that, again, it's another day game, 4:30 p.m. local time, before they go on the road to play against the Houston Dynamo, and that's a 7:30 p.m. game. I mean, playing against in Houston in April, it's definitely much better compared to, like, let's say, playing maybe during May and June, because one of the thing that the Quakes don't want to do is have to play against opponent, especially in hot weather opponent during the summer month. And at least that with them playing against Houston, one of the team that I really hope that they play early this season. They kind of do so, and kind of also play around the same time too, because I know last year they opened their season against the Houston Dynamo on the road, and I think that was like 1 week after when they're going to be hosting the Houston Dynamo this season. But yeah, that's going to be a 7:30 p.m. kickoff time. Follow that, they will be returning at home, and they're going to be playing the first of 4 games that is going to be on Univision. I mean, the good news about this season, or I don't know if it's actually a good news, but they get fewer Univision games, which I'm glad that's going to be the case, because I do not like to watch Twitter games, and I always get frustrated that the Quakes are always end up to be on Twitter. I mean, I understand the whole Mateus Almeida situation and how I remember that when Almeida did arrive to the Quakes, there was like 9 games for the Quakes that season where it was on Twitter, because you know how Univision people love their Mexican players and coaches, or even former or Liga MX's head coach. So I understand why that of course is the case, but at least they kind of back off that hype a little bit. And the first one they're going to be there that is going to be airing, they're going to be playing against Nashville SC, and I believe that's also, I think this is the first ever meeting that the Quakes have played against Nashville, because I don't remember they played against Nashville when they came into the league, and they certainly didn't play against Nashville last season. So that's going to be interesting, and it's also first of 2 meeting against Nashville FC, with them temporarily moving to the Western Conference, and that game also another day game at 12:30 p.m. and a lunchtime kickoff. But the very next game, they will be playing their first night game of the year, and it's against the Seattle Sounders, and it's going to be on Saturday. I think this is one of the few times when the Quakes are actually playing the Sounders on a weekend, because I always feel like the Quakes, whenever they play the Sounders, it's usually on a weekday, or it happened on a Sunday, but in this case it happens on a Saturday at 7:30 p.m. local time. And then the very next week, it is going to be the first of what actually is going to be a lot of Sunday game that the Quakes are going to be playing. I think the Quakes are playing much more Sunday game, and more Sunday game that they have played compared to the last 2 seasons that they have. But the first one, it is going to be against the defending MLS Cup champion NYCFC on the road, and it's going to be a 1 o'clock start. And I think the only good thing I will say about this game is that at least this is not like what happened a couple of years ago, where I'm still kind of angry about what happened a couple of years ago when the Quakes play on the road against NYCFC, and that was literally 2.5 days, but or 2.5 days before they play against NYCFC in that lunchtime kickoff, they play against RSL on the road, and that was just incredibly unfair to the Quakes, and I'm kind of surprised the Quakes didn't kind of complain to the league about that, the fixture congestion. But for me, I definitely was very angry with the way that the Quakes had to play a late night Wednesday game in Salt Lake, and then they have to fly all the way across the other side of the country, literally on a 2.5 day rest, to play a lunchtime kickoff game against NYCFC. But at least this time they do get about a week of a rest, and as I mentioned before, there's not a lot more of Wednesday game in this season. You know, MLS have made that priority, the fact that they're trying to have at the least amount of midweek games as possible. And in fact, the Quakes actually don't have a midweek game until this one on Wednesday, when they play against the Portland Timbers at home. But after the game against NYCFC, they will be returning at home to play against the Colorado Rapids. This is the first of, I think, 4 games that is still to be determined for the Quakes. But then after that, they have to go on the road against Vancouver. That game is a 4 p.m. start, and then they return home to play against the Portland Timbers. And that game, as I mentioned, is the first first midweek game that the Quakes are going to be playing this season at 7:30 p.m. And then they have a Sunday game against Sporting KC, which is a 4:30 p.m. kickoff, before going on the road against LAFC, and is going to be the second game that's going to be on Unimas and on the Twitter network at 3 p.m. before going on the road once again to face against Nashville SC. And that game is a 5 p.m. start, and it's also going to be on Unimas. And I've seen that with the way that when you look at these games, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, these games are going to be tough. Like facing Nashville twice, facing against the Seattle Sounders at home, facing the defending champion, facing the team that finished at the top of the Western Conference, and even facing against a couple of Cascadia team, and facing against Sporting KC at home. These are going to be really tough game, and I won't be surprised during this stretch. This is when the Quakes could potentially have a bad run, because historically, at least for the last couple of seasons, they tends to not play well when they do face against good opponent. But after that, they do go on the road against RSL, a team that they actually did play very well last season, if you ignore that 4-3 loss that they had at home. And that game is a 7:30 p.m. kickoff. Before on June 25th, well, this is the game that I think every Quakes fan, including myself, always look forward to, as they're going to be playing against the Galaxy at Cali Classico, and it's the first time in 2 years that they're going to be playing the Galaxy at Stanford Stadium at 7 p.m. And the game, of course, is going to be on Unimas, and I think that's the last time that the Quakes are going to be on Twitter. But it's understandable because, you know, when you have a Cali Classico at Stanford, most of the time the game is on national television. I think there's only like 1 year I remember where the game in that isn't at Stanford, that is the Cali Classico, that was not on national television. But following that, they do play at home on Sunday against the Chicago Fire, and that's a 6 p.m. kickoff before they have to go on the road, going back to the East Coast to play against Toronto FC at 7:30 p.m. kick. And then they do have a bit of a short week to return from their East Coast trip, where they have to play against the Galaxy on the road. And that game is actually going to be on FS1, and is the only game that the Quakes are going to be playing that is not going to be on Twitter. I believe last year this game was also going to be, or last year this game was on FS1. Or actually, no, I was wrong. That game, I think, was on ESPN2. So now this time it looks like the Quakes are going to be on the Fox network instead. But yeah, it's kind of a shame, the fact that the Quakes don't get more game time on those big networks like FS1 or ESPN. But it's also understandable, well, that this team always gets kind of times on Twitter. And keep in mind, this broadcast, I'm not sure if there's maybe some flexing that is going to happen, but there could be a case where the Quakes could end up on Twitter maybe more often, depending on if these network does have flexing ability and stuff like that. But then on Sunday, well, actually they do, because then I remember the fact that throughout the season the schedule does change, and that teams does move the time slot a little bit, and I know the Quakes have done it before many times, and at least I think they always, every season, they at least have one game where the kickoff time is different, or the day of the game, of course, is going to be different. So yeah, flexing, I think, is something that we've seen a lot happen in the league before. But after that, they do play against the Houston Dynamo at home. Again, another Sunday game. They have a lot of Sunday game during the summer months. Well, actually, I say a lot. There's actually only two of them in between June and July. But I think I also look at how here on May 22nd they were also playing on Sunday against Sporting KC. But here they play on Sunday once again, and they're going to be playing against the Houston Dynamo at 6:30 p.m. local time. Now, usually when you have teams play on Sunday, that's usually a good thing, because there's a good chance that you're on national television. But unfortunately for the Quakes, I don't think any of their game that they're playing on Sunday is going to be on national television. So that's kind of a bit of a bummer that is the case. Like, yeah, I finally see the Quakes get to play on the time when national television games are usually broadcast, and oh no, they're not even on a single national television on the day when national television games are usually prominent in this league. But after that, they do go on the road against the Portland Timbers, which as always, that is an automatic loss, because the Quakes just cannot beat the Timbers whenever they play on the road at Providence Park. But that game will start at 7:30 p.m. local time, before we got another game that is to be determined when they play against RSL on July 30th. Then on August 3rd, they do play against Inter Miami, and this is also one of two opponent that they face for the very first time, and I'm excited. I mean, I always was excited to I always looking forward to, of course, see the Quakes play against new team, and I mentioned I'm excited when they do play against Nashville. This is the same case with Inter Miami, as that game is actually going to be a midweek game. It's going to be on Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. local time, and I believe that's the last, or actually no, that's not the last midweek game that they had. I remember they also have a midweek game against the Rapids on September 14th, but I think that's the last midweek game that the Quakes are going to be having at home. So it's good the fact that there's only, two midweek games that the Quakes are going to be playing at home, which is, it will definitely help in terms of the attendance wise, because midweek games are always tough in terms of the attendance, and I've been to midweek Quakes game before, and usually games are like half empty because of the way that it happens in the middle of the week. Then after that game against Inter Miami, the Quakes go on a bit of a Texas road trip as they play against Austin FC on the road on August 6th at 8 p.m. before going on the road, staying in Texas to play against Dallas on August 13th, and that also is an 8 p.m. start. Then on August 20th, they return home to play against LAFC at 7 p.m. before going on the road once again to play against Sporting KC at 7:30 p.m. local time. Then they would return home again, this time playing against the Vancouver Whitecaps. And again, I think this is also the last time that they play at home on Sunday, as this game will be a 6:30 p.m. kickoff time before they will go on the road, and this will be the first time that they will actually be playing against FC Cincinnati on the road, and first time going to play against FC Cincinnati at TQL Stadium, as that game will start at 7:30 p.m. local time. And I do remember that the Quakes did face FC Cincinnati before they faced them back when FC Cincinnati was coming into the league, and of course the Quakes were able to win that game, albeit that was also the game I remember Nick Lima got himself sent off, and it was kind of a bit nerve-wracking how the Quakes was just holding on for dear life for the last 40 minutes of that game. But after that, they go they stay on the road, and they got another short week, though this is the last short week of their season, where they're going to be playing against the Colorado Rapids on the road at 7 p.m. But then they return home for their final home stretch, where they play against FC Dallas at home on September 17. Then they play against Minnesota as part of the last home game in the final Blues Knot Derby that we'll see, at least for the regular season. And also both of those games are going to be determined. And then lastly, on decision day, the Quakes, well, they unfortunately get the dubious honor of facing against the Seattle Sounders on the road. And it just feels like every time when the Quakes have to play on decision day, they always tend to face against tough teams. Like the one time they did not face a tough team last season against FC Dallas, they weren't even in it. But this also just kind of makes me feel that, yeah, the Quakes better wrapped up their playoff position by the time they have to face against Seattle. Because if there is a case where they do have to win or maybe get a draw to make it into the playoffs on the final day, and they have to play against Seattle, I mean, don't get me wrong, yes, they did beat Seattle last year, and they finally end that horrendous stretch where they lost to the Sounders like 14 straight games. But I feel like that was just completely a fluke, and that I just don't think that's going to happen for a very long time. So yeah, that looked like it's definitely going to be an automatic loss. And that, again, overall, I think when you look at the schedule down the stretch, it does get a little bit easier when they do have some home games against against teams that are kind of like below the red line or just made it to the playoffs on the final day last season. But like I said, when you look at the schedule overall and also throughout the season, things are going to be different. There's going to be times where the Quakes are going to be playing against teams that we thought were good, but they're not really that good. And then you thought that in the beginning of the season that the Quakes are going for an easy stretch, and those teams turns out to be very well, and then they have to play through a tough stretch down the stretch. But what I'm saying is that I can't wait to see how the season is going to go. And heading into this season, I will say that I actually have decided to not renew my season ticket, and a lot of that isn't just because of the fact that it was getting tough for me to try to attend every single Quakes game. Like I actually missed a lot of Quakes games last season, but it's also due to the fact that since I'm probably gonna get a new job heading into the new year, and if my new job means I have to work a lot on Saturday, and especially there's a ton of day games that the Quakes are going to be playing. Yeah, those are kind of going to be the games that I'm probably going to miss, though I know that there is 2 games I'm definitely not going to miss for the Quakes. Well, actually, I would say 3 games I'm not going to miss with the Quakes. It's the home opener, it's this one, and then, of course, it's the last game of the season when they play against Minnesota, because I have to attend the Blues not Derby and see how both of my team play face off against each other. But nevertheless, let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video, and let me know in the comments below what do you think is kind of a tough stretch or an easy stretch that the Quakes, of course, would be having. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.